Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Now, I know what you're thinking. Inflation, that sounds about as exciting as watching paint dry, Frederick. And you know what? You're not wrong. But here's the thing. Inflation, much like a rogue house cat, can really screw up your life if you let it get out of control. Today, we're going to dive deep into the belly of this economic beast and figure out what exactly is making prices go through the roof. We're talking crumbling infrastructure, overzealous banks, and yes, even the weather. Buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride through the wacky world of economics. And trust me, if we can make this entertaining, you know it's a serious issue. Let's start with something everyone loves to hate: infrastructure. We're talking roads, bridges, railways, the whole shebang. Now, when these things start to fall apart, it's not just inconvenient, it's expensive. Think about it. Transporting raw materials to factories, nightmare. Getting finished products to the shelves, good luck with that. Suddenly, what should be a simple commute turns into a logistical obstacle course worthy of an Indiana Jones film, only with fewer ancient booby traps and more potholes. This all adds up to a big fat bill for businesses, which, you guessed it, gets passed down to us, the consumer. So, next time you're stuck in traffic, fuming about the state of the roads, just remember, you're not just wasting time, you're also indirectly inflating the price of everything you buy. Fun, right? Now, let's talk about banks. I know, riveting stuff. But stick with me, because this is where things get interesting. See, banks love to lend money, it's how they make a profit. But sometimes they get a little too enthusiastic, handing out loans like they're candy on Halloween. This creates a situation where there's suddenly a lot more money sloshing around in the economy. And what happens when everyone has more money? They want to buy more stuff. But here's the kicker: we don't magically have more stuff just because there's more money to buy it with. So we end up with the classic case of too much money chasing too few goods. And what happens when demand outstrips supply? You guessed it. Prices go up, like a rocket fueled by freshly printed banknotes. Okay, so we've got crumbling infrastructure and overzealous banks. Now let's add another player to the mix, the central bank. Now, these guys are responsible for controlling the money supply, which sounds simple enough, right? Except it's a bit like trying to juggle chainsaws while riding a unicycle. One wrong move and things can go south very quickly. See, if the central bank prints too much money, it's like flooding the market with those Halloween candies we talked about earlier. Everyone's got a sugar rush, but it doesn't last, and the sugar crash is brutal. On the other hand, if they don't print enough, the economy can stagnate, like a party where nobody wants to dance. It's all about finding that sweet spot, that Goldilocks zone of just the right amount of money in circulation. But unfortunately, sometimes the central bank overshoots the runway and we end up back in inflation territory. Chapter 4. Foreign aid, a blessing or a curse? The inflationary impact of inflows. Now, you might think receiving aid from other countries is a good thing, right? Well, it's complicated. Imagine a friend suddenly showering you with gifts. It's nice at first, but if they keep bringing you more stuff than you can possibly use, it starts to become a burden. That's kind of what happens with foreign aid. When a country receives a huge influx of cash, it can lead to, you guessed it, more money chasing the same amount of goods. And we all know what happens next. Prices start to rise faster than a helium balloon at a child's birthday party. So, while foreign aid can be incredibly beneficial, it's important to ensure it's managed effectively and doesn't inadvertently fuel the flames of inflation. Chapter 5. Government spending, a necessary evil, balancing development with inflation. Okay, let's talk about the government. We all know they love to spend money, right? And to be fair, sometimes they need to. Building roads, schools, hospitals, these things don't pay for themselves. But just like our overzealous banks and generous foreign friends, too much government spending can lead to, you guessed it, more money sloshing around than a water park after a monsoon. Now, I'm not saying the government shouldn't spend any money. That would be ridiculous. It's all about finding that balance, that sweet spot between investing in essential services and keeping the economy from overheating like a laptop running on a scorching summer day. Easier said than done, right? Chapter 6. Exporting our way to empty plates, the hidden cost of essential goods trade. Now, exporting goods to other countries can be a good thing, right? It brings in foreign currency and boosts the economy. But hold your horses, because there's a catch. When a country starts exporting too much of its essential goods like food, it creates a shortage at home. Imagine if a farmer sold all their crops to another village, leaving their own community with nothing to eat. It's a recipe for disaster and a surefire way to send prices soaring higher than a hawk on a thermal updraft. So, while exporting can be beneficial, it's crucial to ensure a balance is maintained so we're not left with empty stomachs and wallets as thin as a sheet of paper. Chapter 7. The Sinking Ship. How a weak currency makes everything more expensive. Let's talk about currency specifically. What happens when your local currency decides to take a nosedive on the international market? It's not pretty, folks. Suddenly, importing goods from other countries becomes more expensive than a luxury safari. And guess who ends up footing the bill? That's right, it's us, the consumers. Left holding the bag while the cost of everything from electronics to basic necessities skyrockets like a homesick astronaut trying to get back to Earth. Chapter 8. The Price of Progress. How rising production costs fuel the inflation fire. Okay, let's talk about production costs. See, businesses have to deal with all sorts of expenses. Wages, raw materials, rent, you name it. And when these costs go up, guess what happens? You guessed it. They raise the prices of their products to compensate. It's like a game of hot potato, but instead of a potato, it's the burden of rising costs being passed down the line until it lands squarely in the lap of the consumer. Chapter 9. Imported inflation. When our trading partners sneeze, we catch a cold. Remember that game of hot potato we were just talking about? Well, it gets even more complicated when you factor in international trade. See, if a country relies heavily on imports and those imports come from countries experiencing high inflation, guess what? That's right, they're essentially importing inflation along with those goods. It's like buying a used car that's been in a fender bender. You might get a good deal on the surface, but those hidden costs will come back to bite you eventually. Now, let's talk about greed, because, let's face it, there's always someone out there looking to make a quick buck, even if it means exploiting a crisis. When it comes to inflation, this manifests as hoarding and price gouging. Imagine a shopkeeper who buys up all the bread in town, then jacks up the price because they know people have no choice but to buy from them. It's a classic case of supply and demand gone wrong, and it's a surefire way to make a bad situation even worse. Okay, here's where things get really weird. Sometimes the mere expectation of inflation can actually cause inflation. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but instead of a mystical fortune teller, it's driven by fear and uncertainty. Think about it. If everyone believes prices are going to go up, they'll start buying more now to avoid paying more later. This increased demand then leads to, you guessed it, actual price increases. It's a vicious cycle fueled by speculation and anxiety, and it's enough to make your head spin faster than a dreidel during Hanukkah. Now, as if all of that wasn't enough, we also have to contend with the unpredictable wrath of Mother Nature. Natural disasters like droughts, floods, and earthquakes can devastate crops, disrupt supply chains, and send prices skyrocketing like a weather balloon caught in a hurricane. And last but not least, let's not forget about political instability. When a country is in turmoil, businesses are less likely to invest. Production can grind to a halt, and inflation can spiral out of control like a rogue kite in a windstorm. It's a stark reminder that economic stability relies on a delicate balance of factors, and when that balance is disrupted, the consequences can be severe. And there you have it, the top causes of inflation. It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but understanding the factors at play is the first step towards mitigating its impact. Remember, inflation isn't just some abstract economic concept. It affects all of us, impacting our daily lives in countless ways. So, stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember, we're all in this together. And on that cheery note, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more insightful content.